put it. Sundered
Yeah.
is a monster for us. Like I would definitely say we probably bit off more than we can chew.
I'm joined today by Will Dubé, who is the creative director at Thunder Lotus Games, and we're going to be talking about Sundered, which is coming out in July. Thanks for taking some time to talk to us about Sundered and your history, Will.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for having me on.
Of course. So, to start, for people that don't know what Sundered is, why don't you give them the elevator pitch, tell them what it is and why they should be excited?
So Sundered is a horrifying fight for survival and sanity. It's a replayable Metroidvania where you resist or embrace ancient eldritch powers, and it's coming out this July to PS4 and PC.
Perfect. Let's talk about that resistor brace mechanic right off the bat, since you brought that up. It's one of the things that I'm most excited to see take place in Sundered. For people that aren't aware, you basically have an ability to embrace the darkness in this world to amplify some of your abilities. But it's been a little bit vague about what that might result in terms of narrative or gameplay. How early was this a mechanical concept for the game?
Really early, actually. When we released our first game, Jotun, back in September 2015, it did really well, and we wanted to build on what went really well with Jotun to make Sundered. So obviously, the hand-drawn art style, the big epic bosses, the immersion, the soundtrack, the world, the Norse mythology, all of that worked really well.
Mm-hmm.
But we wanted to improve on gameplay length and on replayability and on player choice a lot, because we realized that a lot of people, were they were watching the game on Twitch or on YouTube. And we really wanted to make sure that they were maximizing people's experience so they can really create their own experience with the game. So that's really where the resist or embrace idea came from. It's really about empowering players to make their own decisions.
That makes a lot of sense. Now, obviously, you don't want to spoil anything, but can you talk a little bit about how you've balanced those two elements? Because speaking from a personal standpoint, in looking at what has been released in the alpha and the beta, it seems like it'd be an uphill battle if you don't embrace some of that darkness. The if you do resist, you're going to be having a much harder mechanical time dealing with some of the challenges that you're finding. So how have you balanced those two elements?
Yeah, so it's definitely been an iterative process. Like you said, the alpha and the beta really helped us kind of figure out what we want to do with that. For sure, already in the game, there are multiple endings depending on which path you go down. There are three different endings. So if you resist, if you embrace, or if you're somewhere in the middle, you'll have three different endings. And then, like you said, gameplay-wise, it has a huge repercussions. If you corrupt, like the power dash, which allows you to dash in the air, like horizontally, really fast. If you corrupt it, you can do it 360 degrees. And we want these abilities to be really strong because we wanted people to really feel that temptation and really feel like they're really getting sacrificing their humanity for power. It is like an extra step to corrupt your abilities. You have to collect elder shards, and you have to bring those shards back to the ability shrines, and you have to corrupt your abilities there. So we really wanted to make sure that they were really powerful and really that people really wanted to do it. That being said, some people I don't remember if it was the alpha or the beta, were like, hey, well, what happens if I resist, if I don't corrupt my abilities and stuff? So we've actually added stuff in the game for that as well, to make sure that both paths are definitely equal.
Cool. Now, you did mention Jotun, which I wanted to kind of touch base on, in how Jotun influenced Sundered and what you learned. You talked a little bit about what worked with Jotun, with the art style and some of the mechanics that worked and what you knew you needed to include. I was more wondering from a production standpoint, where Jotun, you were a smaller team, and now you're out there, people know your work from Jotun, and it seems like, at least to me, Sundered is getting a little bit more press. How has that changed?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things. we couldn't have started with Sundered, right? Like as a
Mm,
studio, we're definitely building on our fan base, building on our relationships with Sundered. We have a console exclusivity deal with Sony, so we're coming out on PS4 first. So yeah, I mean, obviously, just comparing the Kickstarter success too between the two projects, all of that had a huge impact on Sundered, as much on a marketing standpoint as of what kind of scope we could look at. In terms of team size, we're a little bit bigger, but actually not that much bigger than
mm.
we were with Jotun. Jotun at the peak we were like 10 full time, and now at the peak we're 12. So it's a bit bigger. It was definitely a longer production though, almost like 50% longer. So Sundered, we've been working on it since January 2016. So it's going to be more like an 18-month project. But yeah, we knew Jotun was a great success for us, and we're really really happy with the game. I think it's a great game. It wasn't perfect, and it wasn't like a massive runaway commercial success or anything like a mega hit or anything like
Mm.
that. So we weren't like, oh my God, we have to make Jotun 2 right now.
Right.
And that's kind of what opened the door for us to start looking at a new IP and to figure out what we wanted to do.
Perfect. Kind of also playing off that, one of the things I actually really enjoyed about Jotun when I played it is that it was a branching path, but it was fairly linear on those branches, as opposed to what you're doing with Sundered, which is making it a more randomly generated Metroidvania experience that can be done over and over and over again. What were some of the challenges in tackling that difference in scope?
Yeah, the difference in scope is definitely the right way to put it. Sundered
Yeah.
is a monster for us. I would definitely say we probably bit off more than we can chew. There are a lot of different systems, like you said. There's the procedurally generated world, which is actually not fully procedural. Like the overall
Mm.
structure of it is set in stone. So some rooms are always there, they're always in the same place. But then what happens in between those rooms gets reshuffled every time you die. Then on top of that, all the monster spawns are all dynamic. So those are all like on timers and on different metrics and different numbers that determine like what events spawn at what time, that kind of thing. Then you have the skill tree. Then you have the Metroid style abilities. Then you can
Mm.
corrupt those abilities or not. The multiple endings. It's a yeah. We
Layers
have a
upon
whole
layers.
yeah, we have a perk system too that then goes and multiplies everything. So I think in terms of systems, it's like 4 or 5 times bigger than Jotun was, which because Jotun was a relatively simple game, right? Like
Mm.
it was the focus on the boss fights and then simple mechanics for the levels, making sure that they were fun. And I think that's one of the biggest things that we wanted to improve on is that gameplay in between the boss fights, and I think Sundered is gearing up to be pretty cool. So I'm pretty
Perfect.
happy with how things are going so far.
Awesome. Moving from Sundered to learning a little bit more about you, what was it that drew you to the world of independent game development?
I always played video games. I played a lot of indie games too before. I finished a Bachelor of Computer Science and Computation Arts in 2011. And out of school, I was lucky enough to get a job as a game designer in a mobile game studio. So it was great experience, great learning experience. I got to meet a lot of senior people, and it was a small company. It was just starting, so I kind of grew with the company, and it was just an amazing learning experience. I was a sponge for like 2.5 years, and at the end of that, I was like, oh, okay, well, I think I want to. I'm ready to try to put something on Kickstarter and see if I can make that happen. And Kickstarter worked out, and that kind of, it was the first Kickstarter was the first step basically
Hmm.
to get that like validation, to get a little bit of money, and we were able to leverage that into more financing and to really show to build the team up because we knew that people were excited about the game. So, the most of the core team ended up quitting jobs and stuff, and they joined, and yeah, that's really how we got going.
How it went. So you mentioned you've always played games, but what were some of the games that were inspirational for you? Not only inspirational in terms of wanting to make games, but games that you can kind of trace back, where some of the ideas of Jotun and Sundered started.
Uh, obviously, like we play a lot of different things, but me personally, my favorite game of all time is Diablo 2.
Mm.
Uh, I played a lot of the games coming out during like the indie explosion in 2011 or around then, if you will. And a bit after that too. I really liked Rogue Legacy. I really liked Faster Than Light.
Mm.
I really liked Journey as well. Journey was a huge inspiration for Jotun specifically, actually. It was one of the main inspirations for all the levels and to try and create that kind of romantic feeling of just being in the game and just, just the game being fun, just moving around and stuff. And Jotun didn't quite succeed I don't think it did as well as Journey did in that regard, but it was definitely a big influence. Obviously, like a lot of Blizzard games, other Blizzard games too. But yeah, for Jotun, it was like Shadow of the Colossus, Journey, a bit of like the first Zelda. Those are the main inspirations, and for Sundered, it's definitely Super Metroid, Castlevania. Rogue Legacy is a big one too. Like that the whole die, upgrade, repeat cycle is basically 100% inspired by Rogue Legacy. Though like Flash games from the early 2000s did those, like Penguin Launch and those kinds of games were very, very good at that too. So yeah, a lot of different games, a lot of different experiences. Obviously, music is huge in our games. I think it has it's so important. So we get a lot of inspiration from a lot of different places.
Cool. And the last thing we always like to ask developers we talk to is what indie games or indie projects out there have caught their eye. It's a big field. There's a lot out there. But what are some of the teams or some of the games that are being made that you're eager to see?
I'm a huge fan of Clay as a studio. I have huge amounts of respect for them. Then there are a ton of devs. Obviously, we're in Montreal, and there are a ton of devs around us, which we're actually in a building with like 4 or 5 other indie developers. So it's a really great space. But games that I'm really excited about right now, considering E3 and all the announcements and everything, there's so much stuff, man. And to be honest, right now I'm not playing that much. I'm playing Sundered, like 8 hours a day right now, and just trying to get it out the door. So when I get home, I kind of want to step away from video games and have that balance, which I think is really important for me, anyways. But no, I mean, I played a lot of Hearthstone this year. I put that down for a while. I haven't played the last expansion. Tried to get into Dark Souls a little bit too. Failed miserably because I'm a noob. And yeah, I mean, we're playing a lot of different games. We played this year, obviously looking at games like Hollow Knight and Dead Cells, which are very similar, probably the best comparables for Sundered in recent times. So we're obviously playing those and keeping an eye on all those, but we're really focusing on just finishing Sundered right now because we're right at the end of production. It's a really exciting time to get there, but there's still a lot of work to do, so it's really scary too. And we're kind of going through that process right now.
Yeah, it totally makes sense. Well, Will, thank you for sharing a little bit about Sundered and the design thoughts behind it and your story. As mentioned, Sundered is going to be coming out in July of this year. We'll have a link to the Steam page below and more coverage.
Awesome, Alan. Thanks so much for having me, and it was great to talk to you.